that within a certain amount of months, our staff will be doing the 10 hours of required teletherapy training. Some of our therapists have already begun that training, so that's good news. But that doesn't mean that your children cannot receive speech and language services. There are things that they can do outside of direct speech and language through a Zoom meeting or something like that, where they can be providing activities to do and follow up and check in. But some of our speech therapists there's a couple of them that are already done with it. There's 2, as a matter of fact. So, and we're looking to increase that during this time of closure, which is because we're not in classrooms for a full 6.5 hours a day. It gives them time to do that from home. Many of them have already started. Like I said, 2 already have it, more will be getting it. We will be making sure we're on top of it right now. I have Erica Matthew, our assistant director, who's also a speech and language pathologist, looking into this so that we can move it along more quickly. So yes, they will be receiving services. The teleservices, we need to wait for more information, but that information isn't going to take a long period of time.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions?
So is that, Marie, just specific to speech and language because of the ASHA regulations? Is that impacting OT or other therapies?
I don't think it is. I can't say definitively yes or no on that. It's more, the focus has been on speech and language right now. OTs and physical therapists can do all of their therapies. Physical therapists can do video clips. They can reach out to parents about how to provide physical therapy in the home while they're consulting with them. Same thing with occupational therapists, and the same thing with speech and language therapists. It's the therapies that we're talking about. I'm pretty sure it's only speech and language, but I don't know for sure. I'll have to look into that.
All right, thank you. So next is the discussion on the 2021 school committee location and time. So I think, Susan, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
This was something that was brought up by Kelly. She might be the best one to speak to it.
Sure.
As far as looking at a different venue, per her suggestion. Kelly?
I think we've all probably heard from parents and people at one time or another about how it's hard to hear sometimes if you're in the audience physically. The watching it, the broadcast, sometimes you can't hear people. Certain people aren't as loud as other people. So it's a communication thing, and it's being heard. I think that, for example, maybe it could be repositioning or reworking with the Milliken, or it could be relocating to, for example, Lincoln Street, who has had overhaul with their media services and all of their technology recently with the renovation. So I just thought that, coming towards the end of the year, gearing up for next year, it's probably a good time to start thinking about that and moving into the direction of where do we want to be and how do we want to present ourselves as a school committee.
So just from a technology lens, I did speak with Terry Newman and NCAT, and they can record at any one of our schools. So relocating is not an issue in terms of going out live for them.
Good.
Yeah, I think that moving to a place that maybe has better access to technology might be a good move. I feel like it can be a little bit awkward sometimes when we have to move around the table and find a new spot while someone's doing a presentation. And then if we have a question, we might not have a mic. So those issues come into play. And even when we're sitting in the room, honestly, I cannot see the presentations, the slides, they're way too small. Luckily, we usually have a printout. But for me, that would be really probably the most motivating factor is we have so many presentations throughout the months. So just having those flow a little bit better and not have to interrupt our whole meeting to get up and down would be beneficial.
So maybe just even like a redesigning of how we set it up at Melican as a suggestion, maybe to try before looking at other venues. Or my only concern about changing a venue and time is just the communication flow and how you do it. Like, for example, when we changed the voting and where the voting happened, just making sure that communication is clear to communities and we hit all the cohorts, like the seniors know, and all our community members can know where to access the meeting. And if the communication flow, as long as that works before you change a location, that would be my primary concern, or time, that would be my primary concern as far as how to go about doing it.
And maybe we could look at, first look if there is a different setup that we could use for that reason, the Melican Middle School. I know that, and I think we've all seen audience members that will say they can't hear us. They're making the hand motions in the audience because as we're talking, they can't even hear us. And many times when they've had presentations and we ask a question, they're going like, we can't hear you. And so I think maybe a different setup, maybe try that first and just see, work offsite when we don't have a meeting and plan and just see how it is with the acoustics. I know sometimes in the late summer or early fall, if it's really hot and the fan is on, many times because we've had to turn the fan off because of the noise of the fan that interferes with people also hearing us. So maybe we can try someplace at the Melican Middle School or in the library, just do a different setup and just change it around to make it accessible to everybody and to hear. And also, as Lauren said, even, for the visual aspect of that.
Greg, do you know if Terry's explored different options that would possibly work in that atmosphere or that room?
So I think just a couple thoughts. I agree with Susan and Kelly that if we did switch locations or venues or time, we need to make sure we communicate clearly. And it would make sense if a change was made, whether it's set up at Melican or moving to a different site, that change takes place next year. That way we can launch and be consistent throughout that year. Mm-hmm. I would recommend, from a personal standpoint, this is taking my superintendent hat off, that the first couple meetings in August and September have been brutal in terms of the temperature of the room. So, I think the building that is most equipped in terms of technology and having conditioned air is Lincoln Street School. And if we were to look at other sites, I'd recommend looking at Lincoln Street Library or reconfiguring the Melican Middle School Library so it's a better setup and you don't have to stand up and move if a presentation happens and you can see the presentation. So, I think more conversation. I think if we maybe I can work with Terry on actually going to Lincoln Street School and seeing what that would look like, and maybe having her do some drawings. I know she's not an architect, but interior designer, but maybe even doing some designs that we could look at Melican that might work, and have a further conversation at upcoming meetings.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that idea. I feel like Melican. I feel like it's brutal all year long, even in the dead of winter. It's so hot in there. So some place that's a little bit more temperature controlled would be beneficial.
All right.
If I may, I don't have a very strong position on this, at least not yet, but it sounds to me like, and I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly, there's two issues with the audio that are being reported. One is with the television stream and one is within the room. Is that correct?
I think that I'm not sure if the television stream is because of the room or if it's a separate issue. That's what I'm not sure about. I'm not sure if they're having problems when it's televised because they're experiencing what we're experiencing in the room, how it's difficult to hear and things like that. So I'm not sure if they're one and the same. So I'm not sure if the televised audio would improve if our room itself improved. I'm not sure. Or if there's two separate things, I'm not sure. But I think they're both issues.
Joan, I think you were speaking to some issues within the room, right?
Yes, my issue was when we are speaking and people in the audience can't hear us. And I've heard that through the years. They'll say, speak up louder. I'm like, we are loud. I don't know if it is the, the dynamics, like it's not like an echo. They just can't, they say we're not speaking loud enough. But then when you go to the audio and watch it, it's fine. So
Yeah.
it's the dynamics in that room that audience members that are there are having a hard time hearing us, the principals, and even, the administrative staff and superintendent.
Yeah, I would offer a couple observations. And one is that it's a big room and there's nothing behind us where we sit, most of us who sit on that one. So that's probably part of it. So it looks to me like the low-hanging fruit, kind of to Greg's point, and a couple of people have touched on this, is to see what we can do with that space right now. And it looks like all roads lead to Terry, just because it seems that there is some amplification within the room itself, and she's also obviously intimately aware of the implications with the live stream. So I think we need to go back to her. So in the short term, it looks like we can do that. The moving, certainly for the presentations, I think we all agree is kind of an inconvenience, and also probably throwing off the mic setup. So those are things that we can find out sooner than later. And then it probably does make sense I agree that it makes sense to look at another space that wouldn't be an immediate change due to everything we have going on, the communication. It is very natural to do that when we start another year. The only other question I would have, and I'm sure somebody's thought of this already, is we have that little breakout space off of the library for executive session. Surely there's something down the hall we could do at Lincoln. I'm not, I don't know the building well, so obviously we need to account for something like that as well.
Yeah, good point.
And the other point that I would add is, if we go to Lincoln Street, is there a custodial staff that would be there until the end of our meeting? Because we know at the end of our meeting, custodians are coming in and changing the table configurations for the library class and students for the next day. So do we have a custodial staff that would be available that night?
Yeah, so I'll follow up on all those questions and report back to the committee at the May meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
All right. And now I'm going to give control over to Alana. Alana's the principal here, who will share the Proctors School Improvement Plan update. And just a quick note that the Proctor PTO will present at a future meeting when we're back in person. So just give me a minute for us to share the screen with Alana. And Alana, you have to give me back the hosting rights when you're done.
You can have them back.
All right.
All right, hopefully this will come up. There we go. Okay. So I definitely, when I was thinking and preparing for this about a month ago, I did not expect to be presenting via Zoom. And so hopefully I can be concise and capture the good work that we've been doing over the course of this year. So bear with me, please jump in and ask questions if something's not clear as I present tonight through this slideshow. So we are in a bit of a unique position as we are developing our new strategic plan that will take us in the years to come, where the Proctor School Improvement Plan in our next cycle is a little bit off the other schools. And I believe that Greg spoke about that at a combined meeting about the alignment of bringing our school improvement plans together. Greg, did that?
We were planning on it because of our closure. We have not yet.
Okay.
But I think your point is exactly that, as we're looking at making a recommendation to realign the school improvement plan process so that it does align with the strategic plan. And that presentation will be made to the committees at the April combined meeting.
Does that mean that you're going, because the school improvement plans are what, usually a 3-year plan, and the thing's a 5-year plan, or?
So the thinking is currently the school improvement plans are 2-year plans.
2 years, okay.
So there would we would make the school improvement plans 3-year plans. And then the strategic plan, there's a whole, and I think there's a lot of details that we'll present at the combined meeting that talk about how it will flow and work, and what the committee can expect in terms of presentations on an annual basis from each of the schools.
Okay.
Yeah. So typically where I would be right now in terms of our plan is I would be presenting a new plan to you. That we've been working on, but in order to get an alignment with the other schools and get us all in sync and aligning with our new strategic plan, we are going to be stretching our plan out a little bit longer, which I'll talk about a little further in. So this is going to be reporting out on a lot of areas that we've been working on now. This will be going into our 3rd year. And our school council and our staff will all be working together to develop a new plan to present in 21. So I'm going to provide you with an update on what we've continued to work on, and then some new focus areas as well that will continue to align with our goal areas. Not letting me. Oh, there we go. So I just wanted to, thank our Proctor School Council members. This is a group of individuals that have been with us for the past 2 years going into this 3rd year. And I can't say enough about how wonderful they've been in their thoughtful contributions, their dedication to really looking at our school needs and our students and bringing fresh ideas to the table. Wonderful thoughts, great conversations, and providing a lens as, the school nurse, our ELD teacher, our special education teacher, Sean Gillespie, who has spoken a lot to our council about our CASTLE program, our intensive special needs program. And we have 3 amazing parents that bring great experience and knowledge and depth to our conversations and our work. So I just want to thank all of them. It's been a joy working with them. So I just wanted to revisit our vision statement that we continue to, this is at the heart of what we do and what we think about, when we talk about every day. When we developed this a couple years ago, we come back to it at the beginning of every school year. And, we want our children to leave the Proctor school to move on to middle school, having tools, knowledge, and character to be the best that they can be, to, really aspire to do great things and have a love of lifelong learning. So we're constantly working on our communication, both with each other and with our students and our families, having that open, honest, transparent communication, respecting each other's unique strengths and differences in our learning community, really focusing on personal responsibility. That's been a big theme this year in particular at Proctor, around what role do we play in helping to make our world at Proctor and our community and the larger world a better place. Really sticking with challenges that are presented to us academically, social, emotionally, and persevere through them, and also to have a curiosity. That's really important to us, that we're always encouraging students that if they have a love of something or question about something, how can they continue to explore, discover, and engage with that, and engage in some healthy risk-taking, because I think that for some of our students and kind of the society and the age they're growing up in, risk-taking can be a little tricky and challenging. So we want to make sure that they're engaging in that in a healthy way. And then our mission statement, again, continues to connect with that vision and the work that we do around trying to provide high quality educational experiences for our students. Again, going back to that, we want them to be the best versions of themselves, and that all of our students are on a different learning continuum, and that we want them to keep moving in that direction in a way that's comfortable and safe for them. And we want them to have pride in what they're doing, in their work, in the relationships they have with others, and really having them think outside the walls of Proctor and Northborough to leave a positive footprint and impact on the world around us. So our first goal that we've been working on, that we've really been diving into deeply over the past couple of years and will continue to, is really looking at the data sources that are to the areas of reading, writing, math, science, and technology and engineering, and thinking about those data sources and information do they provide to us about their learning. So some that our MCAS help to inform that we're doing. That's one big data piece that's connected to our families see that, community does. So it's really important for us to help guide our conversations. So we've continued to use our MCAS as on the individual classroom level, teachers looking at it, then grade levels coming together and looking at it. Across grade levels, we do work together. We also involve our ELD teacher, special education, a lot of different support providers enter into conversation on the data. Then look at it as a whole school. So even in our kindergarten and first and second classrooms, testing, they are a very important part of that equation and data, because they're educating our students at those first foundational levels. So we're continuing to do that and help us to identify trends and patterns in our data and what we need to focus on in a larger school. And just the picture that you see there was, this was going to be part of present, but unfortunately we obviously rethink it. But this is a group of fourth graders that were engaged in a persuasive writing unit earlier in the school year, and they were very passionate through their research around the impact that straws had on ocean life, and in particular turtles in the ocean. And so they presented to our school council early in the fall around what this does to the environment, what it does to the turtles and their habitats, and how it endangers them, then to a larger effort at the school where they took data for a week in the lunchroom on how many students are using straws, using the plastic ones, using recyclable straws, or using straws that they can take home and reuse again. And they collected data, Matt, they presented on it, and then it led to eventually where we do not have straws at Proctor. So their efforts out of a writing unit led to that mission and vision around there was an impact on the world around us. So they're very proud that they were a part of helping to make that happen at the school. So I'm going to go into more specifics around it. So we just talked about the MCAS analysis piece. We also have worked into our schedule. We have weekly team time where our grade level teams, along with members of the student support team, our special education teachers, come together where we're looking at data pieces. And the data pieces vary depending upon what we're discussing in our team times. Some examples of that could be summative data from assessments that they might be giving. For example, a grade level may have taken a summative assessment in the area of math, and we are coming together to discuss the results of that topic. So the teachers might come together, they might analyze those results together, and they identify a trend in the pattern in the data. And there's, positive trends where we might see that, a large majority or all the students are really solid on a skill and concept, but there's also opportunities where we see trends and patterns of students that are not secure. And so we want to do more work with them. And I'm going to talk about in a moment where those areas of opportunity have been for us. So we've done that on a rotating basis, where every month in our team times, we rotate topics. So we'll be talking about ELA, reading and writing, and then the next week, the teachers will go back and they'll do some work around that as a team. We come back to the table, we'll have more discussion, and then we switch topic areas where we might move into math or something else. And so it's been really nice to have that time every week where teachers are gathering together, they're talking, they can seek out consultation with other staff members and other supports. For example, we've tapped into our reading teacher, this is Pabriza, to help guide us and give us some suggestions and tools and strategies that we could use. And we've also worked with Maggie McGinty, our district math coordinator, and she's come and met with us, and she's done work with teachers. And it's really been about the needs of the students, about, sometimes our discussions are more global and sometimes they're more specific to certain students that we might have a high need for. So some of the ways that we gather this assessment data, and we've been expanding this and are continuing to work on this, is through progress monitoring tools. So in addition to those larger assessments like summative, benchmark, MCAS, those larger data points, we're also using tools such as iReady, iExcel, Lexia, Read Naturally, where students are regularly, routinely engaged in those to work on skill areas specific to their needs. And we get data from those tools. And then we're regularly reviewing those data pieces so that we can make adjustments to our practices. And that's part of those weekly meetings as well. And oftentimes, other conversations where teachers are meeting outside those meetings and talking about those data pieces. So we're definitely using those, and we keep expanding the tools in the toolbox. So, for example, the Read Naturally program we're using that 4 mornings a week with groups of students across multiple grade levels that go with a group of staff members, and they have a morning intervention block. And that's where they're doing that program, and they're having really specific interactions with the teachers that are working with them. And they're collecting data both through that program as the students are working with it, and also through their observation of the students as they're working through it. So how we were able to accomplish this was through our master schedule. So this year, in developing the schedule for the 1920 school year, we built in consistent blocks across the week, where teachers had that time to collaborate and work with each other. And that's where we were able to identify, for example, the first grade team meets every Monday. And that's a time where their students are engaged in enrichment opportunities with specialists. And then classroom teachers are working with each other on these areas of data collection, lesson and unit design, and things like that, going back to that data piece. And special education is involved in those discussions, again, going back to that consultation and collaboration model where they're key pieces of the puzzle, and working together, we're able to achieve greater results. And we definitely function under the philosophy that none of us are experts in all things, but working together, we can get answers to questions, and we can work for the better for our students. Another area that's been part of our goal related to this school improvement plan is our workshop model, where teachers are designing lessons that allow students to engage in different opportunities within a subject area. So for example, in the area of reading, we've been working really hard on providing students with a mini lesson from the teacher. And the mini lesson is very short in duration, and it's very targeted to a specific skill. And then after that, the students move into rotations where you might see a group of students working on reading a text, and they might have a task associated with that test at their level. And then you might see a small group working with the teacher on something very targeted and very specific. and another group of students might be engaged in a different task. And then they're rotating those activities. So over the course of a week, students are working in different configurations. They're working on meaningful tasks associated with their levels and where they're at, and they're working with the teacher individually or in very small groups. So that's an area that we've been really working on refining in reading and writing, and we're also working on that in the area of math and bringing that workshop model more heavily into the math block as well. So these are just some pictures of, things that we've been engaged in this year that it's really hard to pick the pictures because there's so many great ones of the activities. If you see in the upper left corner and the lower left corner, these are two examples of how we've incorporated technology. So the top one is using the Dashbot robots. They've been learning about states and capitals in grade 4, and this is Mrs. Dowd's class, and they collaborated with our tech team, and they were doing coding, having the robot code it to get to a certain state and a capital based on clues that were given. So this was the start of it, and they were working together, and then they broke into smaller groups with their own Dashbots and their own group, and they had to work together to code the robot and get the robot to go to certain states and capitals. So that was really fun. And then in the lower left corner, that's a kindergarten class, Mrs. Donovan, that's working with their lively letters, working on the letters and their sounds that are associated with it, using the B-bots, which is again the coding. And then the little girl next to that is working on, before we left, we're engaged in a readathon, and we were challenging students to read and fill up, you can see the chart there with the stars. And so she was one of our first little ones that came down with her whole book box and things that she'd read and was so proud of doing that. And then over on the right is, you can't quite see her, but Miss Burns, our music teacher, did Singing Valentines and went with the second graders all through the school, visited classrooms, and this is a picture of our Castle classroom, and sang together with students and teachers as part of one of her activities. So our second goal, I apologize, that should say goal 2 over there, is, oops, we are not moving in the right direction. I'm sorry. Hold on. I don't know what just happened there. Okay, we're going to try to start back over and go. There we go. Learning this new technology the past 2 weeks. All right, here we go. And I apologize, that should say goal 2 there, not goal 1. So another key focus at Proctor has been really in the area of social emotional learning, and in that whole domain associated with social emotional health and wellness, and looking at our practices and what we're doing with students in terms of providing them with a toolbox of strategies to help with regulation, mindfulness, stress reduction, and just overall social emotional health. And I know the PTO couldn't be here, Kelly's with us, but this is a picture of the author Peter Reynolds. And Peter and Paul Reynolds, I'm sure you've heard of them, are famous for their beautiful and amazing stories that they write and illustrate. And the PTO very generously helped fund a program along with the Peasley PTO to bring them to our schools this fall. And our whole theme for our year was developed around the work of Peter and Paul Reynolds, because their messages are just all about kindness and compassion and being the best you that you can possibly be. We did a Facebook Live reading today, and our book of choice today was The Word Collector by Peter Reynolds. So we just wanted to put him in there because he definitely had a huge impact on our students and the work that he did that day with them. So in goal 2, one thing that is new to us this year that has been hugely beneficial to our students is in grades K through 4, our classroom teachers have on every Friday taught our students a lesson from the second step curriculum. And the second step curriculum starts in kindergarten and it works up through the grades, and it builds lessons each year that focus on things like, how do you solve a problem? You know, if you're having a conflict with somebody, how do you talk to them? Identifying emotions and what to do with strong feelings. And each year the lessons scaffold each other, and it helps us to develop a concrete language in a way in which we talk and work with our students. So sometimes if, you know, a student or two comes to visit my office because maybe they're having, you know, a problem out at recess or things like that, we're able to use the language from second step, and that reinforces what the teachers are teaching them in the classroom. And I can, I'll show you some examples in a minute of some pictures and how that's worked. I was very lucky in that I got to teach second step this year every Friday to Mrs. Donovan's kindergarten class, and was one of the best parts of my week, being able to go in there and, you know, work with them and teach them. And we did really fun activities that went along with the lessons. And it's always so nice to see when they're able to take those and apply those when they're struggling with something. We also do lunch bunches and breakfast clubs, and that utilize the zones of regulation and the social thinking curriculums. So those are more on our tier 2 level, where we have specific students identified that need more than the second step, that their social emotional learning requires that they need something taught a little bit differently, or they need a more heavy emphasis on something. And so they use these tools from the zones of regulation and social thinking. We've also been using the zones of regulation across all our classrooms, which helps students identify how their brains and their bodies are feeling related to learning. So you may come into school on a Monday morning after having a really, really fun weekend, and you are in the blue zone and you're just not feeling ready for school. And so we help students get their bodies and their brains into the green zone for learning, so that they're ready to go, they're engaged, they feel good about themselves. And we also teach that the zones, it's okay and it's natural to be in all the different zones at any point, that we all can be in the red zone and have strong feelings or be angry about something, but it's how you manage those feelings and what you do with it, that's how we navigate them. And that transitions us into this year. With the addition of the kindergarten classroom, we ended up having to reallocate some of our spaces. And last year, you may remember, we actually had a Zen zone room where students could go and engage in calming or alerting strategies. What we did this year was we took the Zen zone mentality and philosophy and brought it into every classroom. So now every classroom has an identified break space that gives students coaching and tips and tools to be able to calm themselves, or just take a breather for a couple minutes, or they might need some alerting because they're just feeling down about something. And we have toolboxes, and they're actual physical kits with different tools that have been modeled by the teachers and by our school psychologists and behavior specialists that any student can access at any time to help themselves get back in the zone for learning. So it's been really nice to see how teachers have added to the toolboxes and added different things to meet the needs of their students over the course of the year, because every year, you know, they're getting new students that are different from last year's class. So that's been really nice to see that take place in the classroom. We've also had a heavy emphasis on professional learning with our staff this year. And I think Amy's with us, Souls principal at the Z School. She worked very hard to help bring in Dr. Craig Murphy through an NEF grant, which has benefited all the staff in Northborough. We were able to engage in 2 trainings with Dr. Murphy, again, all around social emotional health of our students, how to work with students that maybe we may see some challenging behavior from, and how to best meet their needs. And so we had 2 sessions with Dr. Murphy, and Dr. Murphy has been doing a consultation model with us at our schools to help us as well. So we're hoping that somehow, given the closure, we're obviously not meeting with him, but we can figure that out when we do go back to school, how to continue to access him and move that work forward. The staff have loved him. Whenever he's done a professional development workshop with us, the feedback has been incredible about how staff feel like they can take what he's giving in terms of tools and strategies and bring it right back to their classrooms. And it reaches a wide range of staff members. So whether you're a classroom teacher or an instructional assistant or a specialist, you can take those and apply those to your classroom. The Proctor School was also very fortunate to develop a partnership with the Dr. Franklin Perkins School in Lancaster, which is a residential and day school for students that experience social emotional needs that require them to be educated in a different setting. And Margaret has been working with us over the course of 5 staff meetings with all of our staff. And again, adding to our toolbox around how do we work with students who are presenting with a trauma history? How do we provide them with the supports that they need if they have significant, emotional and behavioral struggles and challenges, cultural proficiency work. And the staff at Proctor have just loved working with Margaret. She, brings a very real feel to the work that she does. She brings lots of great resources and examples, and again, things that teachers can take right back to their classrooms and use. So we're excited. She's been in touch with me since the closure and has been very flexible about continuing the work when we're ready. And we also have been engaging our staff in book clubs we started this year. So we did a responsive classroom one, rules in schools, and we had over 30 staff members engage and attend the book club and did the readings on their own. And we came together and we had great discussion and activities together. And again, it's all about, just as we add to our students' toolboxes, we add to our staff toolboxes as well. We've had strong partnerships with community agencies that help support the health and wellness of our families and our students. We have a wonderful relationship with Family Success Partnership. We meet with them regularly. They work with our students and support families outside of school, inside of school. Our Castle students have a wonderful relationship with an agency that comes in for PT and OT services and, works with them, ASABIC Collaborative. Our 4th and 5th graders this year were engaged in a 3-part training series with Boston versus Bullies, which hooked them right in because it was the Boston, all 4 Boston sports organizations are part of this. So they got to see some of their most favorite athletes, talk to them via video and via different activities about how you can be an upstander, what does bullying mean, how do you stop it, how do you get help. So that was really great for the 4th and 5th graders, and they really enjoyed having a different person and a different voice go in addition to DARE that they get at grade 5. And I think one of the most exciting things we've done this year is our after school partnership with the Proctor PTO, where we wanted to bring activities to our students after school to expand what they're able to access. We have a wonderful community in Northborough where there's lots of sports activities and different offerings, but this is something that all of our students could access, something different. So we did yoga. We've done STEM. I ran a writing group for 3rd graders, and it was just wonderful to see the partnership with our parents and with our students and see the enjoyment as they engaged in these. And these are just some pictures that go along with the social emotional. The top left is we started something called Positive Sign Thursday. And so this is a pretty regular group of our 5th graders that love, love, love holding the signs on Thursdays. So when people pull up, we have a big drop-off and walker group that comes to Proctor. They greet them with positive messages. So this is Mrs. Mara, who got a warm welcome one Thursday. The bottom left, that's Margaret from Perkins, and she was working in this workshop on what is trauma, and what does that mean for us as educators, and what does that look and sound like with our students in the educational environment. The upper right is our Castle program, and that's Miss Andrea from Assabet leading a yoga group that she does with them weekly, that the students and the staff participate in. And then the bottom right is, that's my most joyful time during the week, when I get to go to kindergarten and teach 2nd step. And we were practicing different breathing strategies for when we might be having some strong feelings. So we learned how to do some taco breaths, which I won't show you right now, but I can if you'd like, how to calm our bodies. And lastly, just looking ahead to what we're going to continue to work on. Obviously, we are going to be developing a new school improvement plan to bring forward in about a year that will align with the new strategic plan. We are going to be working on a master schedule that includes a win block. It stands for what I need for students. So that's going to expand the interventions that we're already providing by really blocking that out in a master schedule, and really thinking about having all hands on deck to support all students. And that will be a range. It could be intervention, and it can also be enrichment as well. Obviously, we want to continue to develop our intervention tools and our resources and expand what we're collecting for data, how we're using it, and then what are the tools. And for our professional development next year, we're really going to be focusing in on diving into math interviews that we're going to be working on with students. And that's a process of gaining more information on students' math knowledge. And lastly, looking at our formative assessment and how we're using that. So that's it. If there's any questions.
I have just two comments. Elena, thank you very much for the update onto your plan. And under goal number 1, when you talked about the online assessment tools, and especially Lexia, because I know that is one, for the phonics and reading, which is licenses. How do you decide what students are going to be on? I mean, do you have licenses for each student, or is that just for students that may need the reading support?
So we look at Mrs. Pabriza, our reading teacher, along with the classroom teachers, again, is looking at the data. And so we use Lexia as a tool based on the data. And there's some students that eventually, quote unquote, graduate where they don't need that as a tool. So she's always talking with and looking at it with the teachers. And we do have enough licenses for that. That's not an issue at all. So all students who need that, use that and get that. And then those students that may not need that as a tool and may need something different or move on from that, then we would provide something else to them.
And that program would also be very beneficial at the time when you're going to be instituting the 2.0, because students could work on that at home besides the licenses that they have in school. Is that correct?
They are, yep, they're accessing that. That's been one of the regular tools that teachers have been using for at home. And it's also something, as we go into this, 2.0, the students are familiar with it. So there's not a learning curve with that in the home environment. They're, well-versed in how to log in, how to access it, and how to navigate that. So yes, that it is a great tool for while we're in the closure.
Yeah, and it also allows the teachers to have the ability to go on to the teacher site and to see the progress of the students and areas that they may need that they can adapt as they go through. So thank you very much on that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, that you did goal number 1 and goal number 2, and it was so exciting to see that you had the STEM in both of goal 1, when you were talking about that you had the science, technology, engineering, and math, and you were looking at that. And then also in goal 2, where you're still continuing that, you get the kids' attention during the regular day, and then you go to goal number 2 and you do the enrichment after, and you're still doing some of that STEM. So that's wonderful to see the continuation and also the enrichment for those students that are staying after the school hours.
I agree. It's nice for them to have that outlet and take some of the things that they're learning at school that they may not think in that moment, oh, I'm learning this, and then they're going after school and applying it, and you can see the light bulb go on where they're making those connections, which is nice to see.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Alana. I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So I really appreciated hearing you talk about the weekly team time for data comparison and curriculum building. Is this something that the teachers have had in the past, or how has it changed this year from years past?
So when we started about 2 years ago, we started with common planning time and started with meeting together and just planning and getting used to the norms of collaboration and looking at that. Then we moved into last year formalizing that, where we started looking at data, and we went through data protocols and how we were going to look at student work and student data. And this year we've really tried to, continue that work and follow that routine and that format. So it was kind of a slow roll out and ramp up to where we are now.
Great.
I can just add that during that block, that additional time, kids were offered different things this year. For example, the second grade, they got to do an extra music class. So Miss Burns did a musical with the kids, and they just loved the extra learning time. So they weren't missing their own teacher during that time, because they were enhanced with the benefits of the other teaching staff there. So
it's great to hear. With the WIN block added next year, will any of that common planning time be changed?
No, I'm hoping I've got a sketch of it in my mind, and now I need to start mapping it out on the actual physical paper. No, the hope is that it doesn't change, because we've already have some intervention time mapped out, and that's held sacred in the mornings. So that's where I'm hoping to use that, and that would be separate from this time that teachers have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you for that thorough presentation. And the enrichment classes look like they were off to a great start. I've been following all the posts on Facebook. So it sounds like those were great additions to extend the school day for some of our learners. And then also the Positive Signs Friday, that was a really good tidbit to learn about. And I love that the 5th graders are getting involved. So thank you for sharing those stories.
They love it. It was really cute, because a 5th grade family who has a 5th grade daughter and then a kindergarten daughter, they sent me a picture the second week, I think it was, of the closure, and said, we miss Positive Signs, and they painted something on their fence and sent me a picture. So it was really sweet to see that. Made me miss them even more.
That's really sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question about the zones of regulation. Is that something that they do in all the classes and everything now? Or so I received it through the speech. They sent me home the thing, and I printed it out for the girls. And I have to say, it really helped me one day with Addie, because she was having a total meltdown. And I pulled out the sign. I'm like, what color are you? What can we do to improve this? So is this something that all of them are doing across all the classes?
Yeah, we've, it was designed to be used at a tier 2 level, but I think, a lot of schools have adopted it and are using it more commonly across the grade levels. Yeah. I know, at Proctor, that's what it's become. Like, we have a big bulletin board in one of the hallways on it, and, we coach the kids through it. We, like you said, Kelly, we're, what zone are you in? How are you feeling? What's the tool? What's the strategy? Yeah. And it's become really common. Specialists use it, support staff use it, classroom teachers, because like you said, it's just a nice visual that when a child can't express themselves because they're very upset or mad, you know, I will just have kids point at the red and be like, this is where I'm at. Great, you told me. Okay, so now what can we do?
And it's really cute. They give you, I think it's right here. They give you like the different options on what you can do. I'm going to see if
yeah, they give you choices and, you know, options, and some kids have developed their own. I have a second grader who's modified it for himself. And that's where Taco Breaths came from. Taco Breaths is not part of the program, but he has helped other kids calm down by using Taco Breaths, and it's taken off at Proctor. So we have lots of kids who walk around, they pretend they're holding a hot taco and they breathe like they're trying to cool off the taco when they're upset.
She must have taken it up to her bedroom because
works for teenagers too. I've used it at home before, so
it's handy.
Looks like it's my turn, perhaps.
Sure.
Are you all done, Lauren? Okay. I'd like to echo what my fellow committee member said with respect to the thorough presentation and the enthusiasm that you bring to this process, which is very notable. As a former Proctor parent, I can tell you that I'm glad to see that Proctor is maintaining its culture and personality. It's a really lovely, positive community. I don't know if it has to do with the way that a lot of the neighborhoods that feed the school are right there, but there's obviously some long-standing, there's a legacy of that positive culture and community at Proctor, which is really lovely. Glad to see that the plan is evolving. So obviously I saw the themes from last time with respect to data, collaboration, but to hear that those things are kind of evolving, for example, that they have become intertwined, the collaborative period between the educators and the review of data and database instruction. As a former speech pathologist, I always had a luxury of doing data-driven therapy because of the small groups and individual therapy, and it's hugely valuable in informing instruction and understanding what works, so that's awesome. Also like to hear that you guys are doing some enrichment. I think when you get to Melican, you hit this world of possibility and enrichment, and it's just that, it's really rich. And I don't know where this idea was born. I remember hearing about it earlier this year about elementary schools, certainly in the upper grades, using kind of some of those ideas and bringing them down into the K-5s, I think is an excellent idea. I think the 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, or even younger ones, if it's designed properly, are ready for some of those things, and it provides a lot of value with soft skills and 21st century skills that can really wrap around the education, the core of the educational process. So I think that's fantastic. The only question I have, and it might be for you or Greg, is where are we headed with respect to kind of educational rounds or rounding, and really bringing that peer review process, which admittedly can be a bit painful because, you know, you're being watched and critiqued, but at the same time, there's tremendous value in some emerging research that suggests that that's a really valuable process to educators. And I'm curious where that's headed at this point and what the status is.
Greg, do you want to speak to that? Or?
Yeah, so I'll start big picture, and then you can talk about what our plans are for next year. So I think when the presentation was given to the combined meeting, we talked about how instructional rounds was started across our 10 schools with 5 networks and educators visiting other schools. So we started kind of like with an outer circle, and our plan is to move it closer to what's happening in the school, having teachers and educators do peer observations with maybe another school, and make it a little bit smaller, and involve more people other than just our curriculum leaders and district leaders. And I think Alana she's been on the team kind of driving instructional rounds throughout the district for the past 2 years or 3 years, and she's been instrumental in the work. And Alana, I don't know if you want to talk about some plans for Proctor for next year in terms of rounds.
Yep. So, one of the nice things that being part of this, we've all had rounds in our building, and I think staff are definitely, have become more versed in the process and understanding of it. And I think there's definitely been a common agreement that we all want to bring the rounds internally into our schools, where we would be setting up our own internal rounds review, where our teachers would be visiting each other's classroom. We would be focusing on an area that we want more information about. And then we would be able to come together and analyze that information about what we're seeing in each other's classrooms. What impact does that have on the larger school and our teaching practices? And then identifying, okay, now what are we going to do with that information, and how can we make improvements? I think a small example of this at Proctor has been with our math interviews. Our second grade team, engaged in coursework around this, have brought it to their grade level, and now we have classroom teachers that are going in and meeting with them and observing them as they conduct math interviews with their students. And then out of that has been born this desire to, let's all take this on, let's all do this together, because we see great value in the information we can get from a math interview. So I think definitely across our schools, that's our next step of doing the rounds in our own schools, focusing on an inquiry, question, problem, practice, and gaining more information and knowledge so that we can make some decisions on how we can improve with students.
Okay, that's very helpful. As you guys go through that process, I encourage you to think about the value of just it's almost like all the educators are like a web that's intertwined in the building, and there's different types of value in doing different types of rounds and observations. So you can look at cross-disciplinary interplay, you can look at grade level considerations, what you learn when you watch an older grade or a younger. If nothing else, it provides new appreciation. When you have people that are in the same content area and same grade level, obviously that's a very close match. So usually what they're getting from each other is materials, tricks, tips for that, content or grade level. So there's a lot of different ways it can play out. And usually just a very simple structure around documenting your thoughts, what things you noticed, things you liked, something that just provides a fair amount of open-endedness and some structure to the observation is a great way to document it from my experience.
Yep, definitely. I agree. And I think part of our process has been we've engaged in routines and protocols to what you're saying, Keith, just around that, about having different teams work together, older and younger grade levels, mixing together different staff members who have different expertise, because you do get a different lens and a different window when you're able to engage in those opportunities. And you get, different kinds of information and a different way of thinking that you may not have had if you were just grade level to grade level. So I agree. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so many unexpected things that come of it. I mean, you have a speech pathologist observe a gym class, and you learn about managing a large group, which can be intimidating when you're a specialist who provides services to small groups. So there's so many neat things that can happen, but it really creates a good sense of community with the educators, and there's so many benefits to it. So I'm glad to see that that's being thought through and worked out and rolled out, because I think there's a lot of value in it. And some of the really high performing districts that that we see in Massachusetts, they've been doing that a few years. So I'm glad to see that we're starting to go that direction, because it has a lot of benefit.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Can I just say a couple words? I'll be brief, but I just want to thank Alana for her leadership. She's a strong communicator, an excellent collaborator. She's always student-centered, and she's a master at building a culture. We're thrilled to have her, and we're fortunate to have her as a leader in our district, and I'm proud to call her as a colleague. So thank you, Alana.
Oh, thank you, Greg. No, it was a pleasure presenting. Again, I apologize I'm not in front of you. But thank you.
We're glad you're not in front of us.
That's right, physical distancing. So thank you. So Greg, I'm going to attempt to turn this screen back to you.
Okay.
I don't know if I've had to
I think I can take it back.
Can you take it back?
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so next on the agenda is the legislative update. And I know, Kelly, you had mentioned, what can the committees do in terms of advocating on the legislative level? Right now, there are a lot of laws being passed and changed as a result of the COVID-19 health situation. We're waiting on a couple. The first is the waiver for MCAS. The state did seek a waiver from the U.S. Department of Education, and we're waiting to hear whether that was officially approved. I think it was verbally approved, but they have not received the official letter yet. But I am predicting that MCAS will be postponed or canceled for the spring of 2020. And the other piece of legislative work that's happening behind the scenes is the Student Opportunity Act plan that is due today, but they actually have moved and shifted the timeline. We haven't received official word, but that is because it's part of a larger law, but we are assuming that that deadline has shifted. So a lot of moving parts and components in terms of legal mandates and laws because of what we're experiencing currently. And if there's anything that comes across my desk where the committee's advocacy could help benefit the district's position, I will definitely let Susan know and generate some letters so we can start advocating on our behalf.
Definitely. And I said, I know groups like NSPAC and things like that, and parents, I mean, anything you need, they'll write a letter that's needed to move things along.
Yep.
To better support our kids. So
thank you. All right, and that is new business, I guess. So next, hang on, I'm just on the agenda is Assistant Superintendent search update, and I will ask Heather if she'd be willing to give an update.
Yes, hello everyone. So I shared Monday night at the joint school committee meeting that we had a very deep applicant pool. So that was great to be able to cull through the applicants. And the search committee met today and we interviewed a number of candidates. Some of my colleagues are online with us tonight. So we spent all day in Zoom meetings, which was a different forum for interviewing. But I have to say that I think that it went very well. We're in a rhythm with interviewing. So those interviews should be wrapped up this week, and the committee will be making recommendations to you, Greg, as the superintendent. And so we're looking forward to this being a great interview search process.
And I know Rhoda is with us tonight, so I have completely failed convincing her to remain as assistant superintendent, but she will be returning as the director of English language learners in the fall. And I just want to also thank Rhoda. She's been terrific all year, but recently she's stepped in at Peasley and has really led the way at Peasley, and while Dr. Coakley kind of gets ready to start after April vacation. So I just want to publicly acknowledge and thank Rhoda for her work at Peasley for the past 3 or 4 weeks. So thank you, Rhoda.
I was curious about how that was going over there.
Thank you.
And Rhoda's been very helpful having on the search committee too, because she can provide exactly what it's needed for the role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And thank you, Heather, for your leadership around the search committee.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, so the superintendent report to the committee. So enrollments. So we are monitoring enrollments for actually FY21 very closely. Yellow are the classrooms that are currently capped in the FY20 1920 school year. The beige are the classrooms that are currently capped for FY21, and we're monitoring projections for kindergarten very closely. Currently, it's 154, and we actually had, I believe, around 152 at this time last year in terms of K students enrolled. We kept the third section of kindergarten at Proctor School in anticipation that we would see the need for that third section with K enrollment based on what we saw last summer as well. So that is enrollment. Any questions about enrollment?
Has it continued to stay stable these last few months? That's been the trend, I think.
It has, and the spike that we saw last year was around beginning of June, July, and early August. Next on the report is the FY20 monthly general fund expenditure report, and I did not put, we do need a vote to approve until audited, and I'll have Becky speak to that.
Oh, you're muted.
Press the space bar.
Yes. Thanks, Kelly. So anyhow, what I was saying was, we touched on this earlier, but the FY20 budget is currently frozen. You can see on the bottom line, we had $367,358, or 1.47% remaining on the bottom line. So we have been going through, we've been working with many of the administrative assistants. We also worked with Tom Maidler to look at some of our open purchase orders and have been closing those that are no longer needed. And as I said, because of some of these expenses that we are not going to be seeing because of the closure, I really do feel as though we have enough on the bottom line to cover the additional expenses for the food service and the kindergarten revolving account.
All right. And we just need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve until audited the fiscal year 20 monthly general fund expenditure report.
Seconded.
All right, so we'll go through a roll call vote. Joan?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
And me, yes. Motion passes.
I have just a broader question about budget stuff. Is this a good time?
Sure.
Yes.
Has there been any discussion at the town level yet about what's happening with town meeting? Perhaps it's been communicated and I haven't seen it, is my first one. My second one is, has there been any preliminary discussions yet about the greater context of the town budget with respect to any projects that we had that were outside of our budget for next year, capital expenditures, anything like that? So it might be a little early on that front, but just curious if there's anything known at this point.
Susan, do you want to take that?
Yeah.
So just with the governor's order of social distancing and non-essential businesses closed through, I believe, May 4th. I have not heard official word that the town meeting has been canceled or rescheduled, but I'm assuming it will be. Joan, and you might have information. So most likely it will take place in the month of May, but I have not heard official word yet from John Kader. Joan, have you heard anything yet?
No, I haven't heard anything yet.
But I think it's safe to say that it will not be as it was previously scheduled. In terms of the larger context of the FY21 budget and what impact this pandemic is going to have on future revenues for the town, there was a public hearing for the town budget, I believe 2 Mondays ago. And basically, Town Administrator Kader spoke to the fact that we're going to let some of this need to play out, and we don't have all the information yet, but most likely it could have an impact on the overall budgets. And he did indicate potentially having a town meeting in the fall when we have all the data and all the facts around what the impact might be financially because of the pandemic. But right now we're holding steady and just waiting for town meeting and waiting for future guidance from John Kadare.
Thank you. Is there any chance they could come back to us and ask us to change what we're bringing forward? Are there legal considerations there? How would that?
So I think at the town meeting, anyone can make a motion, right, to either increase or reduce our budgets. We have had some preliminary conversations around revisiting our FY21 school committee voted budget internally, and having conversations with principals and directors to talk about what if scenarios. What if we were asked to reduce the voted budget by X number of dollars? Where would we have to cut? So we plan on having those conversations internally. We have not yet, but we will in the next couple of weeks, because I think at this point anything's possible.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
So also typically this time of year we'd be talking about the warrant articles and who would read the warrant articles at the town meeting, but I think we can push that off until the May meeting. We'll have a better idea of when the town meeting is. And the last thing on the superintendent's report to the committee is the FY21 school committee approved budget. So the good news, I think, is that many towns do not have a school committee approved budget at this point in time. So we are in a great place. We've had a great process. And I think if we do the work behind the scenes around talking about scenarios, if we were asked to reduce, will put us in a great position to react to whatever might happen. And I'm hopeful that this budget, and again, it's it's a level service budget, will be approved by town meeting members when the town meeting happens. So, and that is the report to the committee.
Okay, we don't have any educational policy. The policy development. We have a few second readings here.
So if it's the will of the committee, we have 3 policies for second reading. If it's the will of the committee to vote these policies, the 3 policies are sexual harassment in the school, A100, disposition of executive session minutes, B210, and conflict of interest, B260.
Were any of these ones that were going to be aligned with the combined meeting?
So
are they specific to us?
Sexual harassment in the school, A100, is a combined, it's 3-district policy. The disposition of executive session minutes, B110, the other school committees are going to be aligning to the Northborough policy, and the conflict of interest is a combined policy.
I think there was just one more formatting issue with the sexual harassment one. And I think we brought this up in subcommittee, just sort of pushing those lines down so that the form at the end just flows a little bit better.
Yep.
But other than that, it looks good.
So we'll format that so it flows a little bit better.
So there wasn't any language changes, it's just literally formatting, not any word changing. Is that what was up with the?
You mean from the first to the second, or you mean in general?
From the first to the second, there were some word changes that we had discussed. But for this second reading, the only thing that I see needing changed is that formatting.
Agree.
Okay.
From where I sit, this looks like it's been carefully groomed and gone through legal and all the other checks, so certainly looks ready to me.
So is that a motion from you?
Yeah, I move to accept the sexual harassment policy in this sexual harassment in the school A100 as presented today.
I'll second.
Second.
Are you just motioning for the sexual harassment, or do you want to motion for the other two as well?
I think I prefer to take them one by one if we
Okay,
could.
sure. Okay, so all right. So we'll roll call vote for the approving the sexual harassment policy as presented this evening. Joan?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
And me, yes. So motion passes. That one is approved.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the policy on disposition of executive session minutes B-210.
I second.
All right. Any further discussion on that one? Okay. Go ahead for a roll call vote for that. Joan?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
And me, yes. That motion passes as well. All right. So we have one more on there as well.
Yes.
What's the context on this one, Greg, if you will, please?
Sure, the conflict of interest. So B260, I believe, I think this was, I believe we did not have a conflict of interest policy in Northborough, but we did, I believe, in Southborough. So we're trying to get a consistent policy across the 3 districts.
So this is a new policy.
I believe so.
Well, based on the history below, it looks like we had one, so perhaps it's alignment.
Yeah, so maybe, so it's one of, I think maybe North.
I think it was renamed, wasn't it? Wasn't it a different, it was,
That could be it.
I
think maybe it's Northborough had it and we made some changes to align with the conflict of interest law, and maybe Southborough region didn't have it. It was one of those where we were trying to get it consistent across the 3 districts.
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, it looks, again, like it's obviously some alignment and housekeeping and probably some refresh with respect to current regulations, so it looks good to me. I make a motion to accept this policy as presented, the conflict of interest B260.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Joan?
Yes.
Kelly?
yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
And me, yes. Motion passes.
Susan, while we're on policy development, can I bring something up that I brought up at the beginning of March? Regional subcommittee policy meeting. Because I think that it would be maybe something that all combined committees could do on the policy. And I brought it also to Greg's attention. It was a MASC policy newsletter that came out to us at the beginning of the year. And there were 4 different policies that they brought up that they wanted us to look at. And the first one was, the first policy was public comment at school committee meetings, and they brought it to our attention. It said policy was revised based on a recent court case. And then the next 3 are policies that have been adapted to meet DESE compliance, and that would be homeless students, enrollment rights and services, educational opportunities for military children, educational opportunities for children in foster care, and the last one to bring in compliance was new educational equity. And so I'm not on the policy subcommittee for the Northborough, but I would gladly scan these and send it to Greg, and whoever is on the policy subcommittee of Northborough could take a look at these and then make a recommendation for the combined, of all 3 to have the same ones. if whatever this policy subcommittee agrees to.
That sounds fine to bring that forward to policy sub.
Okay, so I'll scan these tomorrow and I'll send Sue, I'll send you a copy and also Greg, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we also have a second reading on bullying prevention and intervention policy.
Second reading or distribution?
It says second reading. Did we not approve this one yet?
It says distribution.
It says distribution of bullying.
What am I looking at then?
I don't know.
What agenda am I looking at?
Sue, you can read it to us if you want, line by line. Go
I'm
ahead.
looking at last meeting we had. Never mind. I'm sorry. I'm on our minutes from the last meeting. I apologize. I'm scrolling down way too far. It's distribution. You are correct. I was on the minutes from the last meeting. Okay. Everything looks good on that one. Okay. So we have audience sharing on our agenda. I believe we aren't live tonight, so
Correct.
we are not able to do that. We will post this as soon as possible.
How about the other principals?
Oh, does anybody have anything to share that they haven't already?
How's everything with at home?
So I must say, I was considering wearing my Hawaiian shirt today since we're missing the, since the canceled trivia night was canceled. But hopefully everybody will get their donations in the
Yes.
NES and support our schools. So there's my plug for the evening.
Was
Right.
that our unofficial theme, Susan? Hawaiian?
I was Hawaiian shirts, yes.
Susan had big plans this year for
I
our,
did. I had big plans, but maybe next time.
Hawaiian theme is the Proctor School Spring Fair theme.
Oh, fun.
Oh,
Okay. So if we don't have any audience sharing through the group, since we're probably all talked out, we can go on to personnel items. We have distribution of the personnel report.
so just, I think just one comment that we were supposed to have Tom Maidler attend our school committee meeting to acknowledge his great work and his retirement and cake. So the next meeting that we are in person, I will invite Mr. Maidler to attend and we can acknowledge his amazing work in the district.
That's good.
And then just another long standing employee, Marianne Bryant, administrative assistant at Z School, has announced her retirement. So again, Marianne's done some fabulous work, and we'll have an opportunity to thank her at an upcoming school committee meeting. And I believe Amy is on the search for a replacement. And then Mary Coakley is going to start April 27th. I can share with you, she's been attending many Zoom meetings. Rhoda has been keeping her informed, and she's already started to make the transition, which is outstanding. And that is the personnel report.
All right, sounds good. So communications, we don't have anything at this time. Future agenda items. We have school choice, public hearing, and vote. I assume we'll also, maybe if possible, I don't know if we're gonna have too many subcommittee meetings between now and then, or holding off for policies. Since Joan brought up those additional policies, we may or may not see those coming our way eventually. Are there any other future agenda items?
So I just have a comment about the school choice public hearing and vote. If I remember correctly from last year, I think we had quite a bit of discussion around this when it came up. Are there any resources, either Greg or Susan, you recommend looking into so that we can make an informed decision?
So we can definitely gather some information and send that out in the packet. So you can do some homework and read up on school choice in preparation.
Thank you.
All right, well, moving on, then we have approvals of bills and payrolls, which I believe we will have via DocuSign if there are anything coming our way.
Is our next meeting going to be Zoom, since we're not in school then, right?
Our next meeting is May 6th, so hopefully, fingers crossed, if May 4th we're back, May 6th, we should hopefully be in person.
That would be lovely.
I was
With
looking,
cake.
I was looking at March's calendar. My husband didn't turn the calendar.
All right, so any other business which may legally come before the committee? Seeing
So,
none?
I'm sorry, can I just,
ahead.
one future agenda item is ratification of the teacher contract.
Okay.
Would you also need to put the Proctor PTO on it?
Yeah, the Proctor PTO. It's all coming
Yes.
to me now, so.
Proctor PTO. All right.
Are there any other school improvement plans for the rest of the year or no? Was Proctor the last one?
I believe Proctor is the last one.
Okay. So our next scheduled meeting will be May 6th. Cross your fingers we will be able to do this in person. If not, the Zoom meeting, I think this forum worked pretty well for everybody. I really liked how the sharing of the screens worked out and everything.
Nice job hosting our first virtual meeting.
Right. And we have our next combined school committee meeting for Wednesday, April 29th, according to this.
Correct.
So, okay. So more to come.
All right.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Seconded.
So we have to do a roll call vote. Joan,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
and me, yes. So meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you for
Thank
everyone
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everybody.
Good night.
Drive safe.
Bye.